Welcome. The program we will be presenting to you today is an attendance management app that was created by Jacob Bianco, Comlan, Acolitse, and I, Thomson. To begin, let's go over a few things this program can do. First, it stores and outputs student data, such as gender, days missed, days attended, class ID, and a teacher name. Next, it has a pin for every student and administrator in the database. Administrators have the permissions to remove or add new students to their class and mark attendance. Administrators also have the option to view information of all students in their class at once. Finally, students can view their own information upon logging in with their PIN. The purpose of this project was to create an attendance management system that was very simple to use. We conceived this idea when we were reflecting on our past experiences with attendance sheets and how much cluttered information there was. The project includes a database component so that users can read from and write to it. A swing graphical user interface was also implemented so that users could navigate through the program effortlessly. Here we have a table of the things we prioritized to implement in our program in descending order. Our number one priority was to creating a part of the system which allows teachers or administrators to manage attendance by marking students down as present or absent. This system also stored data about students' attendance to display later. Number two was implementing a function that enabled teachers or administrators to add or drop students from their class. This would either remove the student and all their info from the database or add a new student to the database. This would also be used to initially populate a teacher's class. Number three was creating a tool that allowed teachers or administrators to view information about their students' attendance history, such as the percentage of days they were absent. This tool required authentication of a user by PIN in order to make sure they were the teacher. Last on our list was to create a part of the program which allowed students to see their own attendance history. This functionality would be specific to each student, requiring them to enter their PIN to see their own attendance statistics. Now we will be going over the completed sprint estimates that we drafted up at the beginning of the project and then completed. We began Sprint 1 on September 3rd and completed the following on September 18th. We first designed the project based on a model view controller framework in Microsoft Visio. Then we began backend development by creating classes for a student and a teacher. We then defined methods and variables in the aforementioned classes. We wanted to be able to instantiate our objects and define some attributes of each student, like their name, how many days they were absent, or the days present. At the end of Sprint 1, we had a foundation set for the backend development of our application. Now for our Sprint 2, we began on September 11th and completed the following on October 7th. We first implemented and connected to a database with pre-populated names. We implemented a login function which required a student or teacher to log in using their PIN in order to access the program's functions. We then created a number-based menu system through console output, which represented the distinct functions of the application. Next, we created all the teacher class methods, which were take attendance, add or drop students, and view class attendance, and then created the student class method, which was just view attendance, which allowed the student to see their own attendance history. Finally, we created an exit program method for both types of users. At the end of Sprint 2, we had a completely functional backend of the application. Now for our Sprint 3, we began on October 9th and completed the following on November 17th. We first created a GUI component for logging into the program, managing attendance, adding or dropping students, viewing the attendance report as a teacher, the student attendance view, and the exit program button. At the end of Sprint 3, we had a working prototype for the application, including a navigable GUI which cooperates with the source code and database. We were then able to work on our project review report and presentation. Finally, for our last sprint, we began on November 17th and completed the following on December 8th. We first tested different user cases in our application. We then made sure all code was properly documented. We then conducted rigorous testings of our program to detect any bugs. After making sure our program was complete and ready to be graded, we worked on the final paper and our project presentation. At the end of Sprint 4, we had the final version of our application and all related technical documents fully developed. Now Comlan will be going over the use case and ERD diagram we created at the beginning of the semester, followed by Jacob, who will run our program and display the different features that it contains.
So this right here is our class diagram. While in our planning phase, we created a UML diagram to give a visual reference point for database architecture and so that it may also be used to identify the needs for the project all throughout. When creating the diagram, we started off with the parent class user, whose functions were get username, get pin, set pin, and exit program. The student class's functions were to get and set missed days, days attended. The administrator class's job was to get and set the class's attendance and add and remove students from the class. The student and admin controllers handle the action requests of the student and administrator class. And for administrator and student view, his job was to handle the displaying of the respective information. And right here we have an ERD diagram. For the database, we created an ERD diagram which was used to organize the entities in our database. So 6 entities were created: student, administrator, enrollment, department, class, and classroom. For the administrator and student entities, their PIN is used as their primary key, and their attributes consist of their first, last name, and gender. Student entities also have a days missed and days attended attribute, while administrators have a foreign key as their department ID. Student entities form one-to-many relationships with the enrollment entity, which has a primary and foreign key as a student PIN and class ID. This entity also tracks what year a student enrolled using the enrollment year entity. The administrator entity also forms a one-to-many relationship with the department entity, which has a primary key as the department number and the department's name as an attribute. Both the enrollment and the department entities form a many-to-one relationship with the class entity. The class entity has a primary key which is called the class ID. It also contains attributes such as the class name, class size, and classroom number and department ID. The classroom number and department ID also serves as foreign key for the classroom entity and department entity, respectively. The class entity forms a one-to-many relationship with the classroom entity, as one class can only have one classroom. The classroom's primary key is its class number because each classroom has a distinct number. It also contains an attribute called class capacity, which contains the maximum number of students the class can hold. Jacob will go over a few runs with the program just so you can get more of a visualization of what I just previously explained.
Alright guys, we're going to go through a few test runs of the program and just show off the functionalities of it. So first I'm just showing you the database that these users are already in here. Today we're going to log in for the administrator side as Professor Middle. So his PIN is 42343. This is obviously the login screen. You could type in anyone's PIN. It's either going to take you to the admin screen or the student screen after this. So Professor Middle is an admin, so we're at the admin home screen. Here we have a few different buttons we can press. First we'll try the view info button. So this is just going to show some basic attributes of an administrator, such as their PIN, name, gender, and their class's ID number. Now hitting the home button, we go back to the home screen and we'll look at the class's attendance statistics. So here you can see all the information about each student in the class stored in a JTable, which is then put into a JScroll pane just in case the class got really big. Therefore, it wouldn't fit on the screen. Now, if we want to manage the class's attendance, pretty much just marking if they're in class today or not, can do this. Just fill in each radio button, hit submit attendance, and then it will say attendance has been recorded. Also notice if we don't fill in the button for every user or every student in the class, it tells us must make a selection for every student. Now we can try adding a student to the class, so we'll just create a girl named Jane Doe, female. This has their PIN. Well, actually, first we'll try not putting in a 5-digit PIN, hit submit, and it says J option pane pops up just saying, make sure you're entering all the right information and entering, the format correctly. Now we put in a 5-digit PIN. We'll say Jane Doe has been added to the class. Now we can go back to the manage class attendance screen, and the information doesn't update until we log out of the program and log back in. So we'll do that, log back in. Now if you view the class, you can kind of see her there. Go over here. You can see that she's in the class. And now we can show off the remove student function. So all you do is just hit remove student and then type in the student's PIN in your class that you want to remove. Hit submit. It says student has been removed from class. You can also see this has some error checking. So, if you don't type in a PIN that's in the system or even a 5-digit PIN, it's just going to say that it's invalid. From here, we can go home. Then we'll log out and try logging in as a student. So going back to the database, we'll log in as LeBron James. So 49723. You can see that the students have less functionality. Pretty much all they can do is just view their own attendance statistics and personal information. So you can see their PIN, name, gender, days attended, days missed, just pretty basic stuff. Hit home to go back to the home screen, and then we're back here. All right, and yeah, that just shows off some basic functionalities of our program.